and we had really great response to the first discussion, with a lot of great points developed, feedback and interaction with a lot of the participants. And it's great to see so many people coming back for the second iteration. So what we're going to be doing today, as you know, is, I suppose, hearing from two fantastic keynote speakers, Luis and Anna, who I'll introduce in a minute, and then we're going to get into hearing from you. Even in the few months since our first since the first workshop, the NBS space has developed so much. Our own project, NBS EduWORLD, who we have a lot of partners working on this workshop on, has really come on bounds, and we'll hear a little bit more about that. We'll also have a number of breakout rooms based on your feedback, both from the first workshop, the initial thoughts, and then the feedback to our sign-up sheets as well. You won't have to worry about sign-up. We'll auto-assign you based on your responses in the sign-up sheet, so you'll be in the room that fits with your own interests. So don't worry about that. That's going to all happen in the background. And basically the different topics, I suppose, coming from that first workshop, from your feedback and from some of the conversations we've had, are all about developing resources for education. So looking at engaging with students, what tools we need and strategies really for building teaching capacity at all different levels of education, and then what opportunities there are as well for further partnership and collaboration. I think that's why these networking groups are so important, to build those links and hopefully further projects and to develop this space further. As I said, it is really coming on leaps and bounds, but sometimes we all, or largely most of us probably, work on these EU projects. Sometimes it's good to get an alternative perspective on things. So our first speaker is Luis Camargo, who is the founder and director of the Organisation for Environmental Education Protection, or OpEPA, or OpEPA. But Luis will, I'm sure, correct that. And basically, Luis is going to talk about the South American perspective on nature-based solutions education, giving us a little bit of a different perspective on things than maybe we would traditionally get through European projects, which I think is always a good, fresh perspective. So Luis works for a non-profit organization that holds registrations in Colombia and the USA, and he's dedicated to reconnecting people with the earth to accelerate the transition to sustainable and regenerative cultures by promoting nature-based and regenerative education. They've worked with over 130,000 children and youth and educators already, so hugely experienced, making an impact on the ground with practical, real-world expertise. I'm going to hand over now to Luis Camargo. And Luis is going to talk for about 10 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for 10 minutes for questions from the audience. So if you could hold your questions till then, Luis, over to you.
Thank you very much, Connor. It's an honor for me to be here with all you guys and be able to share a little bit of the work we've been doing and thinking behind it. So as Connor said, I work for OpEPA, which is the Organization for Environmental Education and Protection. And our mission is reconnecting people to the earth to accelerate the transition towards sustainable and regenerative cultures. I've been doing this OpEPA was founded in 1998, so 26 years ago. I started speaking about nature as a solution in terms of nature-based education. So as you will see, this really leads into the ideas around nature-based solutions. And I want to start, since I don't have that much time, just with this question. Is it really just about nature-based solutions or a nature-based solution? And for me, this is quite an important question, because we usually we're coming from a world that's very technocentric. It's very focused on, problem solutions. It's focused as relatively linear processes and very reductionist ways of approaching issues. And as nature-based solutions become, a thing, there is an intersection between, the technocentric and the potentials to become more systemic. Nonetheless, usually when we talk about nature-based solutions, we're talking from a very technical perspective. And I wonder if this is really the approach we need to take. So my second question or affirmation is, if it's not just about nature-based solutions, can we start thinking like a forest and then understand nature-based solutions from there? So in this case, I want to go right into a little bit of what we do in general. So with OpEPA, we've really developed from working in wilderness education, recognizing the separation between human and nature, and that gap being a key root cause to the environmental challenges we're facing right now. And ultimately, as we started creating opportunities to reconnect people to the earth through wilderness education, we thought direct contact was really important. Through environmental education and other things, we realized the issue is much more than just an issue of the human-nature relationship. So ultimately, moving towards the relational space, we realize it has to do not only with human nature relation, but also with the human, let's say the person with itself, the person with others, and the person with nature. So if we're talking about the individual experience, it has to do with that triangle of relationships that is really fundamental to activate what we call the regenerative capacities in humans or in human beings. So in that case, we move towards a relational approach to education that is nature-based. And this is what we are now launching from IUCN and the Commission on Education and Communication as a nature-based education for planetary health initiative. And this is significant because what we propose is that in order to really talk about nature-based education, we need to bring nature into the center of learning. And ultimately, we need to bring learning out into nature. And as you can see, nature-based education ends up being an approach that's integrative and that allows us to really fall back in love with nature and recognize nature as a learning environment, as a teacher, and as knowledge and inspiration. As you can see, nature-based solutions education is part of the mosaic. Nonetheless, there's many other things that are part of the mosaic. So there's climate education, biodiversity education, indigenous wisdom, place-based education, and all of these components need to interact into a holistic approach to learning. So this is basically what we're really focused on. And in order to achieve this, we've realized in Colombia that there's a couple of things that need to happen, and these are three critical aspects of it. One is creating spaces where individuals can connect deeply with nature, connect deeply with themselves and with others, like I said. And in this process, nature holds a really important role because connecting deeply with nature is increasing empathy with nature and coming to understanding our interbeing. Then we need to awaken what I call awaken the naturalist, which is learn to sense both the visible and the invisible. The visible is everything we usually talk about when we teach, but the invisible is, I guess, the key component here is we need to learn how to sense relationships, interactions, energy flows, and those things that are more subtle that we can't really see. But if we look at systems theory, these invisible components are the ones that sustain the health of a system, and we sometimes forget. And only when we're deeply connected and we have that capacity to sense, we're going to be able to really act for regeneration and act in coherence with what is happening in the system and with deep empathy. And this is fundamental. The last one, which I don't have here, is nourishing this system continuously. So how is that reflected in nature-based solutions education? I'm going to talk quickly about two initiatives in Latin America. One from OpEPA, which is the nature-based school networks. And these are networks we have created in 14 cities as the underlying component for cultural change that accompanies nature-based solutions and biodiversities. That concept that was created in the Humboldt Institute in Colombia. And here the idea is to create citywide learning ecosystems where nature is at the center. And if you understand this, you know, in order to green cities, we need to begin greening hearts. And this is why education becomes a nature-based solution. And I think this is really important in terms of breaking the concepts of the technocentric and understanding that we need cultural centric, you know, evolutionary nature-based solutions that allow us to bring significance and understanding. Other things we have learned is that, you know, we combine the nature in cities, nature spaces, nature opportunities with schools and with allies. So those three layers, and allies can be museums, zoos, botanical gardens, but also public offices, companies, anyone in the ecosystem that could resonate a little bit with this, and we connect all these. So creating those cross-sector partnerships is really important because it brings significance and coherence to the system, to understanding how nature schools, public and private systems connect with each other. And ultimately what we're doing is starting with that connection, you know, going back to falling back in love with nature in the cities and recognizing nature as a really important actor. In this process, we've realized a couple of things are critical. You know, bringing a different concept of leadership to educators and to other actors in terms of regenerative and nature-based leadership, where we can really fall back to be inspired by nature, bring all these metaphors from nature, so people start speaking a different language and start understanding how nature leads, and maybe how that can impact the way they lead in terms of emergent leadership and other, you know, qualities of nature leadership. Another critical thing here is the systems thinking component, which brings us to thinking in planetary health, you know, and how planetary health is ultimately relational. A system is not really healthy because of its components, but mostly because of how those components relate with each other. So this is a critical aspect. And this brings us to system thinking and learning and understanding, you know, the interconnection. So I always ask, you know, is it just about the solution or is it about all the interactions around the solution? Sometimes education is not only about teaching about the solution, but actually teaching about everything else so the solution emerges from within and it's understood. So I'm going to merge with the other initiative. The other initiative is an initiative led by a colleague and friend in Mexico. But this graph he has expresses exactly what we're doing in our cities. You know, starting from the house to the street to the city to the watershed. In our case, we're starting from schools, modifying schools, learning environments, from learning environments to the neighborhoods, from the neighborhoods to the, you know, regions or the localities where parks and other components are and streets, to the city itself. So really thinking about nested systems in nature-based solutions is key to really being able to understand interconnectivity and interdependency, you know. And in this case, this solution that's called Ama Tu Calle is really based on starting from homes and also from schools. They use really innovative educational elements. While we use outdoor and nature-based education, they use play and card games and co-designing, you know, your city and your city street. And this is really interesting because they engage in really collaborative building of nature-based solutions, understanding systems and their interrelations and how they relate with well-being. So they start with asking, you know, what is the city that would bring you well-being? What is the street that can bring you well-being? How should your school that brings well-being look like? And how nature plays a role in it. And from there, they bring all nature-based solutions into the formula, but as an emergent response to what people are looking for. They're looking for spaces of play, spaces of, you know, interaction. They're looking for water. They're looking for trees. They're looking for all these things. So check this out. It has great tools and it could be a great resource for you. So just to finish, remember to think beyond nature-based solutions, because ultimately learning about nature-based solutions is really working in learning about connection, sensing, action, connectivity, and community. Thank you.
Great, that was absolutely fascinating stuff. Thank you so much. I'm going to open to the floor in a minute. If you could just raise your hand if you have a question, and I'll just go around in order. But maybe to get started, Louise, like some of these ideas that I'd say you're preaching to the choir a little bit here, but a lot of these ideas could be quite intimidating to a lot of other people. And I was just maybe wondering, could you talk us through what an actual workshop might look like when you're saying you're connecting people and bringing them out to nature? What does that actually look like if somebody else is trying to replicate it?
Okay, so part of what we do, it depends on the places where we're working, but I'll give you an example. We've been working in the Caribbean coast in Barranquilla, which is a huge port city in Colombia, industrial city, so its history has been quite complex. Ecosystems have been really degraded, a lot of trash, a lot of difference in incomes, and a lot of poverty within the city. So when we started working in that city, and we first map all these layers I told you about. As we map these layers, we figure out which zones based on micro watersheds, really, how the city divides in connectivity through water and through natural landscapes. And we create nodes of the network in those. So by convening these individuals through these connected systems, it allows us to start speaking about natural connectivity and biodiversity and flows within a city. Additionally, in this city, for example, we realized that the well-being of teachers was really impacted. So we ended, instead of starting with the nature human relationship, we really focused on the human with itself, the individual with itself in natural landscapes. And it's really interesting to see that either way, if you go and really explore the human nature connection let's say in a park and start working with nature-based activities, or if you really focus into the individual in a nature environment, you get to the same place. Connecting to yourself ends up connecting you to nature and vice versa. So in this case, we're really focused on exploring self and recuperating, creative capacities and self-worth in the individual. But with that, they connected deeply with the living system around them. So as that happened, through, we did mindfulness combined with play, combined with inquiry of their environment, with exploration of the senses. And through this process, it awakens, that sensibility. And as that awakens, we start asking questions of relational qualities that go beyond the individual. And only when the teacher actually is, after many of these workshops, they're activated, we bring regenerative leadership into the picture, and then activate them to bring students with these concepts into learning in nature and natural spaces. And we frame everything really with the question of how can you create the conditions for life to thrive, very much following Janine Benyu's kind of inspiration, but it's kind of the regenerative direction that we realize it's fundamental, because independently of the differences, social, cultural, or anything, this is something where people really find the common connection. Do you all want to create conditions for life to thrive? Do you want to find well-being? So let's create that from the way we relate to ourselves, others, and nature.
Brilliant, thank you. I saw a hand there from Simone, but it seems to have gone for me. So we might just go to the question in the chat is from Selvan. How do we connect it with school to community?
Okay, so school to community, it connects depending on the schooling system. I think in Colombia it's been a little harder. Some examples, we've been working, an organization we work with in the United States is different. For example, just because if a school is protected in Colombia, it's protected because there's a lot of threats outside. So school grounds are not part of the community, easily accessible. Nonetheless, if you're able to really mediate those spaces where school grounds and community can connect, then there's thousands of possibilities, because you can start by creating outdoor classroom spaces, rewilding spaces, and creating, for example, food gardens in schools, and using these three tools to create environments where nature comes in. And when I say rewilding, I also say rewilding with a nature-based solutions perspective. So I can take, for example, a water runoff channel and make it actually a wetland, a seasonal wetland, uh, where in the dry season it becomes, a huge playing space for children with outdoor classrooms with, all these plants and rocks and things. And as the waters come in, it becomes the sink to support, those small floodings and the filtering of the water in the city. And these elements really help to expand. Community gardens become also a really important component, because to community gardens, you can definitely bring people from around with a perspective of direct benefit in terms of food, but also to understand, a lot of other concepts around, ecosystemic services and nature and well-being, while keeping it in a space where students are also learning. So it's a place of connection between children and schools. And the last thing I would say is that as you start creating these spaces in schools or appropriating local parks as learning environments, creating the bridges that allow to propose connectivity initiatives where you can connect parks and corridors, thinking about learning about biodiversity, about flows, and all these other things. But it becomes almost like an emerging mycelial network where you start with little hubs, and those hubs, if you think it that way, they can bleed out into the community, into these green spaces. And when you bring nature-based solutions into cities, thinking them as the connective tissue between the learning spaces, the living spaces, and obviously watersheds and other important natural flow aspects within the city.
Yeah, I love that image of growing these connections across the city and greening our urban spaces. Simone is somebody who knows a lot about this. Simone, over to you.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, correct. Thank you very much for your talk. It's very, very close to what we try to achieve, actually. So I am a naturalist, and our program is completely focused on this part. So we try to make the children count birds, insects, or a lot of different species, and how to identify them. And we expect during this process that they will connect with nature. But sometimes we fail. And that's something I wonder if you have developed techniques when you have someone that is very reluctant to connect with nature because he has bad experience with nature. For example, mosquitoes, he's scared of spiders. He has another example is he has a green wall, and there's a lot of insects that comes into his house. So he wants to just shut down the green wall. So this kind of failure that we expect we don't expect, actually. We have sometimes, and we try to not have. Do we have any solutions, or do we have?
Yeah, I think there's many approaches, and I agree with you. We face these things. We've had students that are 11 years old that are not capable of sitting on the grass because it's scary. So definitely, I think there's many ways of approaching this. There's not, I think, a one-way solution only. Obviously, decreasing fear is going to be the priority. And in this process, as you decrease fear, or one of the strategies to decrease fear is to increase love and awe and discovery. And so really focusing not on the fear, but on the awe really works well. And with many of the children, we say, to learn about nature, you don't only have to go out into nature. So if that's a scary process for an urban child, you can bring nature inside the classroom, even not even bringing the animals inside. That's not what I mean. But you can always start with creative things that allow for awe to awaken. So playing ecosystem sounds. There's a lot of landscape soundscapes right now available in different spaces with images. Just having kids be quiet and in a, let's say, mindful state, listening to these sounds, and then talking about the conversations that they heard. Obviously, initially you only hear sounds, but if you start bringing a lot of the creative qualities of listening deeply, you can ask, who was speaking? What were they saying? What were the conversations? What those animals look like? And it doesn't matter it's precise or not, because initially it's a creative process to release. And then you can start bringing in the species that are making those sounds and the ecology of those species, but also bringing those magical tidbits on nature, because we need to help kids understand that nature is not scary. It's actually fantastic and wonderful. So help them be amazed and be at awe. And that allows them then to have a different lens when they go out into nature. They might be afraid, but if they start recognizing those things that awaken their curiosity, that surprise them, that are incredible when they understand them, then they start getting closer and closer and closer until they break their fears. So that's the general process I would say could help.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Luis. And what a topical talk. We'll leave links to that. Oh, I see another question from Vesna. We can have one more quick question, and then we're going to go over to Anna then. Last question, Vesna, please.
Oh, sorry, it's not a question. I would just say that I agree about that technocentric society. It is a problem because if we had this society and love part of understanding the nature, that other part that maybe is not so visible. I would just say that one example, Mandelbrot for the fractal Mandelbrot, it was mathematician that found the fractal patterns in social part of the society, in trade market. She observed the trade market, and then he found patterns, and then he discovered the patterns in nature. And also, like patterns are in nature and those flows that you were talking, Luis, about. And it's also a social part of connection to people. So one solution could be observing the nature, like by mimicry and everything, and bring those flows, nature-based solutions in social connections, and also about impacting the society. So I agree with that, that we should move from the technocentric or not abandon it because we are a part of this society, but make levels and make interconnection and to level up every part of the society. Thank you.
And Vesna, thank you very much. If I can comment 1 second on this. I do think patterns are part of those invisible aspects I was mentioning. So learning to sense, and the reason I call it awakening the naturalist spirit is because I think there is, if you look at children and their capacity to discover and explore, bringing that idea of exploration and maybe connecting it with naturalists in history, that have incredible drawings. They're multifaceted thinkers, they're observers, they're poets, they're writers, bringing some of this artistic expression into the way we communicate what we see, what we sense, is fundamental to inspire. So this is where those subtle qualities, and in education, we need to connect, both the emotional, but also the capacity to express through art, through poetry, through all these other things that naturalists were exceptional at doing. So thinking of naturalists as our allies in education for nature-based solutions, for nature connection is fundamental.
Brilliant. Thank you, Vesna. And Luis, thank you very much, not only for joining us early in the morning, but also for a fantastic talk. I think everybody can understand that need to empathize and understand ourselves before acting. And we all know that need, I suppose, multidisciplinary approach where we have this technical aspect that is probably certainly present in everything we're working on as well in terms of nature-based solution, but now looking maybe more at the social side, but not as a standalone, bring them both together. So thank you very much, Luis. And with that, I'm going to hand over to one of our project partners on NBS EduWORLD, Anna Mitic-Radulovic, who is the founder of the Center for Experiments in Urban Studies, or CEUS, from Belgrade. Anna is a local coordinator also on the Clever Cities project. And she's a licensed architect and urban planning professional with not only 2 master's degrees, one in urban development and another in the development of economics and international cooperation. So Anna's going to give us the experience in Belgrade, and we're looking forward to hearing a little bit more of the European side now. Anna, over to you. So we're just on mute.
Okay. Do you see my screen shared?
I can see your home page, and if you maximize that, yeah, perfect, lovely.
Okay, excellent. So yes, thank you for the introduction. Now we will get back to the European projects context and a bit more of the technical side of the story. And basically, we are an association of urban planners, engineers, but we also gather environmental activists and educators in order to translate that inspiration from nature into messages for policymakers. So we are one of the 16 partners of NBS EduWORLD project, which has various educational priority areas, but we are focusing on how to enhance learning and education to create more cohesive and participatory and respectful inclusive communities, and how to create those synergies between educational professionals and NBS practitioners, and as I said, policymakers. So our journey in this area started in 2018 when we participated together with the city of Belgrade in the Clever Cities Horizon 2020 project. And in that one, we focused on the planning of the new linear park in Belgrade. And we wanted to do it in a very co-creative manner, which will basically educate the policymakers and technicians who are working on the plan, but also wider citizenry as well as students, not of the primary and secondary schools, but of the architecture, planning, biology, chemistry, and so on. So in this effort, we use the co-creation methodology developed by Polimi, our partner in the Clever Cities project. And here you see the graphs in Serbian language, because we collaborated with the Faculty of Architecture in order to translate the methodology that was already developed, in order to enhance and underline the strength of co-creation in making something in the real life context and the real life space. And what students also worked with us on was to translate the NBS catalog, developed also by Polimi at that time, and adopt it to the local context. So we organized various in-person events and exhibitions in order to disseminate that knowledge and to co-create it further with citizens and participants of the workshops. And during the coming years, we translated into a real catalog, which is prepared as a publication to be on disposal to everyone working in the NBS field, especially in the area of urban planning. And for this specific plan of the linear park, we organized like a task force, which we called Urban Innovation Partnership, now 5 years ago. And this was quite a novelty in local policy making in Belgrade, because it had a lot of interactive work, and we organized a lot of focus groups. One of them included the educational institutions from the surrounding of the future linear park. And that one was really very constructive. And in that one, basically, we were able to define the vision for the future linear park, which was not the result of some other working groups and focus groups that we organized for representatives of more professional and academic and SME bodies. So basically, the vision that we created was with educators who were not afraid to step out of their comfort zone and think of something completely new and to be creative and to propose new solutions. After that, we prepared a questionnaire for citizens about the ambient and amenities and the dynamic that they would like to feel in the new linear park. We received over 570 answers, and those answers were actually the inputs for the student competition that we organized for this area. The entire zone of the linear park, which was 4.5 kilometers long, we divided into 10 sections. And we proposed 2 of those sections, 4 and 5, to be the demonstration polygon for the creative proposals of master students and young professionals. We received 28 proposals, which were really, some of them were really outstanding, and we selected 10 of them. And each of the 10 selected teams were further developing one of those areas of the linear park. In the meantime, there was the early public consultation, which was the first moment when the public is actually involved in urban planning of any space in the city. And it was a bit of a surprise for us because it underlined a lot the potential of real estate development around the linear park. And it even proposed construction of new 35,000 of square meters within the area of the park. And that was completely opposite to what the people and the citizens wanted and expressed in the results of the surveys, in the focus groups and the workshops. So we basically systematized all the answers and translated them into the official remarks to the public administration on 8 pages. And that was quite challenging because we wanted to keep the authenticity of the remarks and of the inputs of the citizens and of the young people, but to make them usable for urban planners. And around the public consultation, which is the second and the final step in urban plan development, when wider citizenry can make amendments to the proposed plan. We also announced the results of that co-creation competition, and all the 10 teams presented their work. And considering that it was still the COVID time, we made it like a digital map, and we made some videos and invited everybody to react to their proposals. So we basically used that competition results as a prototype for the future park space. And then again, we systematized a lot of inputs. We organized additional panels and discussions, and we gathered really a lot of interest and a lot of people, because it was the first time that a real space in the city was created in such a way. And it was very educational for both the policymakers and urban planners, but also for the citizenry, because in the beginning they were just like giving really small comments like, oh, can you please fix the stairs near my entrance? But then later on, they really realized that we are talking about the public good and about nature and how we can make the real green oasis in the city center. And this way of engaging young people to react on the real challenges and real development projects in the city resulted in some formal novelties in the plan of detailed regulation, because their competition results and proposals were actually part of the plan, which was never ever the case before. And also we had a new drawing material, which was like a composition plan, which was never ever used in the urban planning documentation previously. But we also managed to truly integrate the principles of nature-based solutions in the rules of construction and space ordinance. There were some successes because students in some cases managed to save the amenities of and assets of citizens through their design solutions. Some of the construction that was supposed to be demolished were saved and repurposed. In some other cases, it was very difficult to integrate the proposals of the students into the real urban development plan, but that was all part of the process. About the same time, we started collaborating with the Center for Promotion of Science, which was working on Terrifica Horizon 2020 project, and they were crowd mapping the climate vulnerability using the citizen science approach. And basically, this repository of their material was additional backing up for our advocacy in the planning of the linear park, because they correctly spotted the vulnerable dots, and that is why we propose nature-based solutions for also flood protection and urban drainage protection in some points of the area of the linear park. And together with the Center for Promotion of Science and the City of Belgrade and Faculty of Architecture, we established the Belgrade Urban Living Lab, and we registered it in the European network of living labs. And within the NBS EduWORLD project, in March, we organized a hackathon with students. And one of the polygons was the area around the linear park, but some of the groups who participated in the hackathon actually re-questioned the solutions that were proposed by the linear park. And we really like these ideas, and we will include them in the future publication that we are going to prepare regarding this topic. And currently we are working on the new document that is being developed, and that is the green infrastructure strategy for the city of Belgrade. And we are planning to kind of deploy the similar mechanism to engage various stakeholders, from planners, researchers, and government, but also civil society organizations and students, and the real estate developers and private sector in a co-creative process. We are participating in the task force for this strategy development. The process is a bit slower than what we expected due to the local elections in Belgrade, which is a normal thing. But we plan to organize another student competition in order to ask for proposals from youth of how to engage citizens in actually creating new and maintaining existing green areas in the city of Belgrade. Along with this, we are preparing nature-based solutions capacity building workshops, both for representatives of the public sector from the ministries, but also from various local self-governments and urban planning institutes and other agencies. And we also prepare several publications and educational resources. Some of them are also serving as policy advocacy instruments. For example, the first left one is on the use of ecological index in the planning of Belgrade, and more on technical elaboration of NBS in the Serbian context. But we also developed an educational game for younger students, and we tested it with the Center for Promotion of Science. We developed cards of around 30 animals which are present in Belgrade, and we worked with 5 ecosystems in good and bad condition, and then we compare how many animals we can see in various settings. And we also organized the outdoor workshops for children, especially when we are testing some new tools or some new games. And along with this, we organize like open green walks with citizens in order to just walk, feel the nature in the city, and explore the good and the bad examples. And Anna Simic can say a little bit more about this in the breakout rooms during the next session of the workshop. And this is just to briefly mention at the end that we are also working on education and networking on the regional scale. We now behave as a secretariat of Urban by Nature Global Program and Southeastern European Hub for this program. It started around 2 years ago when we organized like a pre-launch at the Nature of Cities Festival. And from March until May 2022, we gathered official letters of 8 mayors from the region that they want to take part in this program and that they want to collaborate and network and learn from each other. And for us, it is particularly important because Belgrade is the capital of Serbia, which is a candidate country and not an EU member state. And in the Western Balkans and other candidate countries, the level of knowledge about NBS is quite lower than in the surrounding European member states, for example, Slovenia and Croatia. This was the official kickoff in May 2020, and then we organized a series of 5 webinars. And 2 weeks ago, we are trying to keep the network alive, so we organized another The Nature of Cities Festival session. Then we heard about the good examples from Croatia, from Zagreb, and from Nova Gorica in Slovenia, and about some living labs experiences from Montenegro, and then again from Belgrade. So that would be all from our side, and thank you.
Thank you, Anna. I suppose we'll do the same thing again, where if you want to ask any questions of this great worked example, please just raise your hand or put any comments into the chat. Anna, how's the city? Like, are the city looking to develop more of these projects now that this one has been such a success? Are other cities in Serbia looking to copy it? How's that working at the moment on the sort of local or national level?
Yes, there is an increasing interest in nature-based solutions in cities in Serbia, but Belgrade is still in a focus and has more funds available. On the other hand, it's much more complex than other smaller cities in Serbia. So yeah, each context has its pros and contras, of course.
No, it's fantastic. Like yeah, definitely to give over that much space and land, like the city clearly have bought in. You know, it's absolutely fantastic.
Yes,
really,
exactly.
really good initiative. And to encourage the younger people as well to get involved is key, I suppose, in changing those mindsets. Well, thank you so much. I don't know if you have any finishing links or anything like that. If people wanted to find out more information, maybe you could put those in the chat for us, and then similar to what Luis did, people can follow up individually, maybe your LinkedIn and the project link. That would be really, really helpful. With that, we're going to go over to our breakout rooms and get to our discussions on the topics that you guys wanted to hear about. And this is, I suppose, really a big focus on a lot of the effort that the ICLEI partners in particular who did all the backroom organization have put in, but really taking the lessons, as I said, from the previous workshop and the sign up information so that we can tailor this to what people want to talk about. And as we all grow our understanding and develop our understanding and working on our projects, we want to bring in as much knowledge as we can from this group and develop this group as well. So in the first instance, we're going to be assigning you to breakout rooms now. The first one is with Simone Beneteau, who's going to be talking about innovative approaches for engaging students and communities in NBS education. Anna Simic from CEUS is going to be on the same topic, but a separate room. Maria Gallo, who's my colleague here in Trinity College Dublin, is going to be talking about resources, tools, and strategies for building teachers' capacity in NBS education. Shreya from ICLEI is going to be talking about opportunities for partnerships and collective action between educators, policymakers, NBS practitioners, NGOs, Jesus, long list, businesses and community organizations. So everybody, it seems, is going to be in this one. And Adriana is going to be also from ICLEI, is going to be on the same topic. So it seems we are all interested in this kind of network and interaction and stakeholder management piece, which is so important. And finally, then Carm from ICLEI is going to be talking about strategies for integrating NBS concepts into educational curricula. So looking forward to hearing the discussions. We'll all go into our individual groups, and then we'll come back into this main group to have a little bit of feedback and a bit more of a discussion. And yeah, looking forward to hearing all of your thoughts and getting the conversation going. Thanks, guys.